I wanted to talk today about market research and market demand.
Okay.
I think, I just got off the SBDC orientation event, and I love the optimism, but saying that, oh, you have a business idea, and so like you're set, you're golden, you're gonna be successful is
Obviously,
kind of
there's demand
naive.
for it, right?
Yeah.
You have an idea. There must be demand. You think there's a demand for it, so there's got to be a demand. No, there doesn't.
Well, I wouldn't say there's not. I mean, I think in a population of 6 billion people, there may be a demand. Whether you're in the right location or able to serve the people who think like you and there's a demand for it is a whole different conversation,
Exactly.
and I'll give a quick, simple, easy example that I think is very important to consider is Harley Davidson.
Right. Harley.
So are you aware of Harley Davidson's India operations?
No, I wasn't aware that they were in India.
Yeah, so
I'm guessing they're making a very different motorcycle.
no. So Harley Davidson moved to India, or didn't move, but has attempted to build a very high operations in India because India is the number one country in the world for buying motorcycles.
Yep, that makes sense. Yes,
Okay,
they're everywhere.
huge
That's
population
considered
density.
normal
Yeah,
transportation.
the problem is the Indian motorcycle in U.S. dollars is usually on average, I forget the exact number. We'll say $2,000
That sounds
is
about
like a
right.
high end. The low end, like middle model that's the most sold is like $1,000 or $1,500,
Mm-hmm. That'd be about
right?
right. Yeah.
Harley Davidson's is like $7,000 minimum over there.
Yeah. It's the motorcycle for the rich.
Well, so get this, it used to not be that way.
Okay.
It used to be they were struggling.
Okay.
What happened is due to all of the American business influx in India, it's built a middle class Indian society.
Oh. Okay.
And so now the middle class Indian society's sign of success is driving a Harley Davidson. There's an interesting video done a couple years ago by CNBC talking about that, and I thought it was really interesting
So
how
Harley is the Cadillac of
motorcycles in India.
India.
I thought that was absolutely hilarious, but I think it says a lot about how market demand can change, right? Because it
Yes.
used to be that market didn't exist. There was not people willing. They wanted a Harley Davidson, but like the financials weren't there to afford one.
Right. Well, when you understand that for years you could buy a very large, very nice house, all custom tile work everywhere, okay, for like $43,000 to sell a $7,500 motorcycle in
Yeah,
that environment, there's just not a lot of bodies.
yeah.
There's just not a lot of people.
No, but I mean, I just think that transition of demand, right, is huge. Number one, number two, it also was a struggling division of Harley Davidson for a while, and it still is a struggling division because they're still sitting there looking at all these other manufacturers that are making tons of money in India, and they're sitting there like just trying to sell these high end
Right.
motorcycles, and just people don't have the money for it.
Right. Well, the other people are making tons. Who are they? I mean, I can understand an Indian company
So
making
there's
money.
an
I
Indian
can't see
company. I think
the
there's
Japanese.
a Japanese motorcycle. I'm pretty sure I forget which one. I'm pretty sure there was a Japanese motorcycle company that they mentioned
Okay.
who was making a cheaper. Um, Basically, they're making a cheaper version of their motorcycle, right? Um, which is something Harley Davidson just has purposely chosen not to do. Number
Right.
one. Number two, the thing that they were talking about that's killing Harley Davidson is Harley Davidson's American focused, right? Which is great for America. When you're importing to a country like India, they tend to tax you very heavily for those imports.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that was another big issue that they were talking about that like was hurting Harley Davidson is because they do manufacture in the US all their motorcycles. They're paying the tariff and the transportation costs that come along with that, and it's very expensive. Versus, if they build a manufacturing plant in India and they literally built with Indian prices and stuff, they could have a cheaper,
Correct.
more affordable
Correct.
option.
Yes.
But they've chosen not to take that route.
Uh-huh.
But this is one. But I mean, I think that's a great example of like why market demand matters. I think another great example is I think of the. Are you aware of like the China Home Depot expansion?
Yes, I remember. Well, you told me about it,
Yeah,
so I know about it, but I think it's hilarious, and
yeah,
it makes perfect sense. By the way, makes perfect sense. It's the most logical thing, and people thinking logically to the wrong conclusion
yeah,
because everybody's like us.
yeah.
It's a great example of that.
No, I mean that's literally what it is, and it cracks me up for that reason because it's just like Home Depot went into China with the assumption that they're like Americans. There's a middle class America, not realizing that in China you don't fix your own stuff. That's not culturally a normal thing. Having a Home Depot to go buy your raw materials and go fix your stuff yourself is just not. It's not culturally what happens. And then on top of that, they never really provided the value to the construction companies there to make it to where they're getting the B2B side at all. So it just was a total flunk. But you reverse that with like Starbucks. Are you aware of Starbucks is China expansion?
No, but I would imagine they're doing quite well.
Incredibly well. But guess what they did?
Well, they're probably selling tea over coffee.
They went for premium teas. So if you go to like a Chinese Starbucks, they have a lot more premium teas there than they have coffees. Because coffee is not as culturally normal in that society, but tea is very prevalent, and tea houses are incredibly prevalent. So having a premium American tea shop is basically what Starbucks is, and it's done incredibly well for them.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
One
It's
of
a
the most,
special event and all that stuff. Yeah.
and well, I mean, it's incredibly profitable. I mean, it's one of the like the countries that's just killing it for Starbucks.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense.
So I bring these stories and these examples up to kind of talk about like understanding your market demands and what people want. I'm curious in your own experiences, what have you seen people do to determine market demands?
Well, what I've done in the past, and that I really loved when Google was the search engine and having AdWords was the thing,
Yeah.
is Google would tell you what the demand was. You could just literally look at the searches for various words or phrases, which they still give you, and you knew whether or not you were in or out. That's easy. The problem is today, all the in and outs, all the stuff that people are searching for, there's usually a myriad of companies already in there, already fighting over those keywords if there's real money to be made.
Yeah.
Um, and so for the most part, it's yes, I can tell you that you're wanted, but yeah, we've got a mountain to climb, so to speak, where if you do something that's not searched for, then yes, AdWords is not your friend, but at the same time, you have all these other things, areas that you now need to look into to determine whether there's a real market.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of businesses fall down is they keep thinking that, well, I like this, I think this is a great idea, so therefore everybody must think it's a great idea, and that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy, and it's just not true. Just because you love something, just because you think something would solve somebody's problem, they may not care that they want that problem solved. And so you have to go into the larger process that we've put together and talked about.
Well, I mean, I think to that point, I want to mention, the pub talk from OEN that we both were at recently.
Yes.
I think we saw two great examples of where it works out and it doesn't work out when you have that faith. We heard blanking on their names, but we heard the lady from Tender Living Empire.
Yep.
Who talked about how she just had faith that it would work.
Right.
There's literally no.
She was in love with art, and she knew other people that were in love with art, which is the key. Yeah. That's what makes her different.
But she still, it was a huge guessing game that could have failed.
Yes.
Like there's a chance it could have failed.
But it depends on how big her network was. If she had a network of 100 or 200 people,
it didn't sound like it was that big though. From my interactions with her, it seemed like it was much smaller when she started out. I mean, yes, she had designers creating, maybe 30, 50 designers, but she didn't have like a demand base to buy it.
Okay. But as she said, I just was passionate about this thing, and I just found other people that had the same.
Thankfully, it worked out. But we also saw on the opposite end, the guy from Stoller Wines discussed about the one product that he created, the software he helped create, where it seemed great, people were interested in it, but the user base was not actually utilizing it.
Right.
And without a user base, I don't care how much you believe in it, how much you love it. If people aren't using whatever it is you created, then it's not going to work.
I was around for NerdWallet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was around for that.
Well, it wasn't NerdWallet, was it? I
Yeah.
thought it was something different. He said.
NerdWallet.
Well, that's the company today. I think it was something different.
Okay, something different then. But yeah, I remember it. It was this wonderful thing that I had no idea why they even invented it. It was great because it used things that today people are familiar with,
Right.
cell phones and all. They were trying to bring it in when people were just trying to buy PCs.
Right.
And figure out it justified the reason why would I have a home PC?
Yeah.
That was the people's question, and he's got NerdWallet already.
Yeah,
He's already got this electronic way to carry all your stuff around, and it's like, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, society wasn't ready.
So he was ahead of his time. I think it was a good idea, a good product. I think, and today we have it in Google Pay. We have it in the ability to put your credit cards,
the wallets,
and use the wallets that way. That's what he created.
Right.
But he did it before we had cell phones. Before we had
cell phones, who could use that technology.
We had smart cell phones.
Yeah.
And so
payment systems, I don't even know where the payment systems. Oh, I guess you had the swipes been around for a while.
Yeah, we've swiped been around forever. But the problem is he was trying to replace the swipe with this.
Yeah. Thing. Before it was.
And the thing is that we didn't even have smartphones.
Right.
So,
or at least not heavy adoption of smartphones.
So now you're telling me I've got to carry something around in place of my wallet.
Yep.
To carry around my credit cards and use it, and then of course the problem is because of the way it had to work because of what was out there.
Yeah.
It didn't work everywhere. So it worked in your nicer, fancier places that were more progressive.
Right.
But your everyday shops, no. So parts of the country, it wouldn't even be accepted.
Yeah. No. There's a whole infrastructure build out that it was predated.
I mean, you remember when we were in Michigan, how backwards some of the things were when we.
Yeah. No,
and it was
definitely.
Just like, wow, I didn't know that.
Compared to Atlanta, yes.
Yeah. Atlanta, everything's, just so you know, there's Wi-Fi everywhere in Atlanta. I mean, not having Wi-Fi or high-speed internet is just like unthinkable. You got to be really out in the boonies. And in Michigan, almost nobody has high-speed internet unless you're in a city. And if you're in a city, you typically have a choice for high-speed internet.
Yeah, one provider.
You don't get A and B.
Or at least that's how it was. I mean, it's been a while.
Most of the places.
But, yeah.
And even in large cities. So most people there, believe it or not, were still, 6 years ago, 8 years ago?
About 9 years ago now.
About 9 years ago? 9 years ago, we're still using dial-up. And I think the only way they've actually gotten off dial-up is T-Mobile's home internet.
Well, I'm sure they've gotten other stuff by now, at least in Lapeer.
But the wireless home internet from T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, that is probably the most common form of internet now in Michigan.
Yeah.
At this time.
But it was incredibly there's a big difference. I mean, technology growth and build out opportunities.
So you have a product that can only be used some places. It can't be used everywhere, which means you still have to carry your credit cards.
Yep.
That was a problem, and you never fully solved the problem at that time.
Well, you also have, I think, population density issues that are always a factor as well.
Yeah.
Right? With market demand, right? And this is something like you see with certain companies that get it. If the population isn't dense enough, there's not enough people. You're such a small percentage of the population that cares about that. You have to be in a high density population area to just make money, let alone good money.
Exactly.
Trying to do a shop in Seaside, we'll say, would be really freaking difficult just because there's just not enough people that live there.
Well, unless you do it only during the summer and you have all these people flooding in.
Maybe if you can get the tourists, right?
Yeah.
But
you're selling to the tourist crowd.
Yeah.
You're not selling to the locals, and you pick up a few locals, and that's nice.
Right. No, but it's not. I think that's just market demand. Another example of market demand would be some of the companies that I've run into where it's what they're offering. It's Portland's a progressive city, and I think Oregon as a state, as a generalized statement, is a much more progressive city or state. But there's some things that are just, there's a heavier density population of those people in California and Washington than in Oregon.
Yes.
There's just more of them.
Yes.
Right? The number of employees in San Francisco that are making over six figures that are progressive, the number of people in Portland that are making six figures are very drastic different population sizes.
Yes. Right.
And so understanding that like your market demand has to have the finances and has to say that this is worth whatever the budget is to create for that
Right.
is super important.
Well, think about something that everybody kind of takes for granted now. Comic Con.
uh
Okay.
yep,
First started in Los Angeles,
yep.
but back before when Star Trek first came out.
Tell it
Okay.
back in the what
Back in the
70s, right?
60s.
Yeah, okay, 60s, yep.
60s. When Star Trek first came out, there was no Comic Con.
No.
There was no reason to have a Comic Con.
Mm-mm.
It, I mean, people had interest in science fiction always,
Yep.
but something like Comic Con just did not make sense at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't until we had Star Wars on top of that, the resurgence of Star Trek, and all those that you finally got a large enough population
Yeah.
that was actually tracking that they said, hey, we'd like to get together and talk about what we love.
But all right, you want to know the funny thing about Comic-Con though? Even with that, there's a great like one of the great things I think is interesting about those is the transition and the demand there.
Okay.
So it used to be predominantly superheroes and sci-fi geeks.
Right.
It's now anime, superheroes, and sci-fi geeks.
Right. Because anime has taken over the whole sci-fi
Yeah.
industry.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying it's interesting to me because it's like the demand's changed.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's my point. Is
Over
it's like
time,
the demand's
it has
changed.
moved. Yeah.
Your business, if you were selling Star Trek or Star Wars stuff 10 years ago, is selling very different today at Comic Con than it was 10 years ago.
Yes.
And the volume is less today than it was 10 years ago. And vice versa, if you're selling anime 10 years ago, you probably weren't making a lot of money at those events, if any money. Nowadays, you can make a lot of money selling anime stuff at those events.
Yeah. And a part of it also was like, I didn't realize, but when I was growing up, some of my favorite cartoons
Yeah.
were anime. I just didn't know
They
that
would be considered anime. Yeah.
Well, they were actually done by anime studios
Oh,
and
okay.
all that. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until
Oh, I guess yeah. You
just
were
recently
into
when
like
I
the
was
sci-fi cartoon stuff. So yeah.
yeah. And but I didn't realize that anime's been around a long time. It's just not been
Popularized
not
at
called
all.
just anime all by
Right.
itself. It was always owned by a network.
Yeah.
So the network owned that series,
Right.
and it isn't until recently that some of those things have fallen out of copyright and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. I just think it's a great example though of like and this is kind of the follow-up point I wanted to get at, right, with these market demands and stuff is like market demands inherently are going to change as consumers change.
Well, they're going to change over time.
Right.
Because,
Well, that's my point.
Because society changes over time. And as much as we like to say it stays the same and certain underlying factors are always the same, things change.
Yeah.
I mean, the cell phone has made a huge, the smartphone,
Yeah.
not just the cell phone, but the smartphone
Yep.
has made a huge change. I mean, I haven't had a home phone in 20 years.
Since Georgia.
Well, before that,
No, you had one. We had one the entire time.
Right, we had to because your mother
Mom
was
stuck on that.
stuck on that. But ever since, yeah,
she kept her home phone to almost till she was done with her house.
Yeah.
She kept it
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah, but a home phone is just like insane. I mean, you got a cell phone. I carry it with me.
Yep.
You need me. I mean,
I don't need a home phone. Yep.
Why would I have a home phone? I mean,
Yep.
what does it do that my cell phone doesn't do? And I know what the answer is: faxes. Okay, but I'm okay with that. I mean, yes, there are people who still use fax machines today. Very few of them.
Yeah.
And there are ways around having to have a phone line for a fax machine. So
yeah, no, I agree. It's become obsolete, and
I don't need dial-up internet. So if I had dial-up internet, that'd be different.
So to that, right? So to that point, though, I want to talk briefly on kind of that subject a little bit of like the market demand changes. So I'm curious, what businesses do you see that survive market demand changes?
Well, the one
like how would you define them?
Right. Well, what the one I like the best is Bob Iger with Disney.
Okay.
And because I just read his autobiography of his time up until he left Disney and how he started in ABC and what his path was to getting into Disney and then becoming the head of Disney, and it was quite fascinating. But what was interesting about it was he was looking for what is the next trend beyond where we're at.
Yeah.
And that was his kind of key to success, is what are these other things that are kind of dying off that they've done their spike.
Yep.
They hit, everybody loves them, and now they're kind of in this downward thing. But even though they're in this downward spiral, so to speak, there's still a lot of money to be made.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that they can't do that we're already doing. We already have people in place.
Yep.
How can we take their idea and bring it into the mix of what we're doing and just add it in and pick up all the money in the parks, in the online, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And one of the things I loved about it the best was where Disney Plus came from.
Okay.
Is the story behind that is that Disney Plus was a loser. Disney Plus was a bad idea. Disney Plus was the kind of idea that gets CEOs fired. Okay. And causes everybody in the company to quit. And he found a way to get the board to back him, to just stick it out and do some insane things that they shouldn't have done and make it a success, because he knew on the other side, this online streaming service was the place that everybody was going.
Yeah.
That was where it was going to be, and that's where the money would be. But it was going to be a different kind of money than what they've made before, when they were licensing to networks and that kind of thing.
Right. No, yeah, entirely different.
And it was different money than they had before for other things, for sales and all. Yeah. Because they had the Disney stores they were trying to push into their own retail, not just putting it in somebody else's store. And it was this thing that he could see where there's all this money that was going to come in from all these different sources, but it was going to take time.
Right.
Because as many people as there were online that would buy a streaming service, the upfront cost of making that all work, the infrastructure you had to put together, was so massive that it just wasn't going to make any money.
I mean, they're still struggling to make money on it. So I mean,
yeah,
they still got some issues going on with it.
But for them, the backside of it was where all the money was made. Yeah. So it's the figurines that you buy when you go to Disney World. It's the figurines that you can now buy online. It's the
Halloween costumes.
And additional things and other things that are licensed now because of that.
Right.
But he saw that that's where it was going. And so we could stick with the networks like we had, and we could make money from the networks, because they were getting paid good money from Netflix. Okay. For Star Wars and all that.
I believe it. I mean, they had
They had good revenue coming in there, and it was like, we're going to cut off that revenue source for this other revenue source that we know is going to generate less than what we're getting from them.
Right. With the anticipation
that these other things. And so then when they launched Mandalorian, that was one of his ideas of how can we bring in some new content that's now going to be exciting and engaging and bring people in, and then look at all the residual things that came out of that and make the money on all that residual and change really the way we look at things. Gotcha. And that's where businesses mess up, is that Disney was very successful. Disney had money. Disney was doing fine.
Yeah.
When he made this move to being an online streaming service.
Right.
And so logically, most business owners would say, well, just forget about that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But by becoming an online business streaming service, he was able to then leverage in Pixar. He was then able to leverage in
Marvel, National Geo,
and all these other things. He became the more natural person to actually sell the business to, because Pixar wasn't for sale when he bought it from Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But not Marvel Studios.
When he bought Lucasfilms.
Lucasfilms was not for sale when he bought it. And Marvel was a really interesting, bizarre.
Did the book talk about that sale?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I've not heard that sale.
It was bizarre. It was bizarre. It was.
Stanley was quite the character.
Well,
So
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
aware
well,
of
they
this. So
actually purchased it right after Stanley passed.
okay,
So it wasn't until he passed that they acquired it. But there was even then there was a whole thing of why are we buying this?
yeah,
How does this make business sense? We've
right,
already got our Disney stuff. We've got our
yep,
Star Wars stuff. We've got Pixar,
yep.
and all that, and we're doing great. So why mess with
No, yeah,
with success?
that's what most people
Uh,
say.
and Marvel Studios had its own little twists of how they worked and where things were done and all. And even when they
Mhm.
acquired them, it required Marvel Studios to make some changes as to how they did things and how you
Yeah.
did how you handled certain things.
So I will interject real quick. One thing to point out because I mean I think Disney is a great example. I think Bob Iger is a great example of innovating. I will say one downside of those kind of innovations though that we have seen from Disney that's being talked about a lot lately with a lot of their Star Wars related films. They innovated too much. And here's what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but for The Mandalorian, they decided to build a full screen immersive system
Yes, I saw
for
that.
the film.
Yes, 360, and there's people sitting at one perspective, literally controlling the colors
Yeah.
and everything, all
Really cool
rather than
idea.
a green
Yeah,
screen.
yeah, no, really cool idea, right? Really great idea.
Yeah.
It's now basically being forced into everything they do to justify the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making their films limited because now rather than being able to actually be in the woods or actually be here or there, they're filming it in this limited space area, which means it looks like a limited space area. And so their fight scenes, some of their other scenes are just not able to really take on the real look
Mm-hmm.
that people would want because they're confined to the space of, Disney's like, hey, we spent all this money on this. We need to use this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I will say that just as like a little throw out, like to me, I think one of the biggest downsides to Disney that I've seen is like, and to companies in general that innovate a lot is sometimes they put so much money on their R&D and on this new project. And then they're just like, we have to justify the cost, even if it's hurting the business.
Right, right, and that's probably one
And
of the things that he's going to be changing as he gets back
I
in
hope.
as CEO, because he talked about that because they did have other things like that over
Yeah.
time that happened, and he had to come in and say, look, I realize we have this and we love this and we spent all this money on this, but this needs to be done this way.
Yeah.
And
I hope so because there's a lot of people that are kind of like, it's been getting some complaints. If you watch the YouTubers or the people at X,
yeah,
like it's getting some
yeah,
complaints because it's showing.
yeah, yeah, and that's probably one of the reasons they brought him back, is that he
It's
had
actor.
the will, he had the, how can I put it, he spent a lot of time getting to know people,
Yeah.
especially the little people,
Yep.
because they matter.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I thought in his book was so interesting, is his emphasis on, it's nice to have great people that have great talent and all that, yada yada yada, but it's the little people and how that affects the little people and the culture that
Mm,
the everyday worker that comes there
yeah.
wants to be in and wants to work in, and that's as important as getting this big name director or whatever.
Right. I mean, I will say I do hope that he ends up increasing the pay of his workers because that's been one of the issues of Disney I know for a while. That kind of
Yeah,
bugs me a little bit
yeah,
is that Disney basically has not increased. I don't know if you know this, just sidebar. Like
no,
Disney's not increased the pay of their like worker. Like they did that whole like we paid really well, but as inflation and minimum wage has gone up, they haven't
haven't
adjusted.
adjusted because of
So they
that. Yeah,
like 20 years ago were paid really well.
yeah,
Making 40K nowadays is not. I mean,
right,
in Miami,
yeah,
Florida, and metro,
yeah,
areas,
yeah,
that's not, Orlando, Florida. That's not a justifiable pay.
right, right.
Like that's not. You're not buying a house on
No,
40K.
no. So yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how he tackles some of those things, um because it was really interesting because he that had come up,
Yeah.
and part of it was like with the Pixar deal, is like with Pixar, the only reason Pixar sold to him, reason, uh,
Steve.
Steve Jobs sold Pixar to Disney was because he promised them that he would keep their culture,
Yeah.
and their culture had certain idiosyncrasies that just like were just not Disney.
Yeah.
Okay, in so many ways. But he said, look, I will keep at Pixar's culture and this thing because I can see that this thing is why the people do the great work that they do. This is what motivates people. So this
Yeah.
is what we need to do.
Okay. So, okay. I like that. All right. So real quick, I want to kind of keep this one brief. So I real quick want to move on to innovation, because we kind of talked about like innovation now, right? As like the key to like helping sustain market demands.
Right. And that's one of the places that you really need to do market research is when you're innovating. And that's I feel like it's one of the biggest fallacies or failures of innovators is I have this great idea, I want to do this thing, but they don't spend the time to really figure out who it is that they're going to sell it to.
Well, and that was kind of going to be my follow-up question is, or kind of thought. I'm curious your thoughts on is when it comes to that market research side for innovation. I mean, we've talked about Disney's innovation of still waiting to make successful with Disney Plus. We've talked about the guy from Stoller Wine's electronic wallet stuff, right? Sometimes you create something before the rest of the world's ready for it,
Right.
right?
Like ATMs.
What do you see as like the way for people to understand I need to kill this versus I need to put this to the back burner for 5 years? Like how do you see as the best way for someone to kind of determine that through market research? Because some things just never going to take off, right? Or haven't at least taken off yet, right? And
Right.
there's quite a few things that I know you've seen in the tech space that I've seen in the tech space where it's like cool idea, not really going to be an everyday thing,
Right.
right? Like I think of Samsung's like the flip phone that goes
Yeah.
to be bigger. I thought about getting one for a while, and then I'm like, you can tell like the
Where the
crease,
gray
number
goes.
one, which is kind of annoying.
There's always a crease in your
Number
picture. Yeah.
two, I'm going, I don't like if I need that big of a screen, I got my tablet already, I've got my computer, my laptop, the TV screen. Like I don't really like, what I'm saying? Like I don't have
I
a
don't
need
need.
for my
I don't
phone
know
to
that
be
I need
like
to
that.
carry that in my pocket. Yeah.
Like I would never use that. So there's some things that I think are just society's not at least ever currently going to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some things where you're just ahead of times, right? And you just need to wait another 5-10 years for society to catch up, or 20 years maybe for society to catch up and to become like a thing.
Right.
Like another great example is I think of the flying platforms that
Yes.
were created back in the
Yes.
60s, right?
Yes.
In the 60s, it was too early. And the way that they were implemented was just a bad implementation for the time. In today's society, like I think of like the parachute with like the backpack thing, like that is taken off right now as like a basically equivalency to like paraglide or not paragliding, hang gliding,
Mhm.
right? For people who want to hang glide in areas that you can't hang glide, like that's become a huge tourist attraction is doing something like that, right? You do, a bunch of courses, you have to come in, do some safe classes, but then you're able to go and do this thing and like have that experience of hang gliding without needing the exact location and wind and everything for hang gliding.
Right.
So I think of like things like that where it's like you just need to have waited time or you need to have like changed your approach. So when you look at, your own experiences and what you've seen with history, how do you think entrepreneurs and business owners and innovators should look at like how do I classify my project?
Well,
Right?
yeah, right. Well, the first thing is you've got to look at convenience.
Okay.
Okay, so if you look at the ATM was launched 20 years too early, and it failed miserably.
When was it first launched?
I don't remember.
When did debit cards become a thing?
Yeah,
Do you know?
I don't know, but it was in the either late 60s or early 70s. The first ATM was launched, and it failed miserably.
Okay.
And it failed because the reason that people went to the bank was for the interaction with people.
Mm.
In other words, I go into the bank to talk to the teller, to have a human interaction, and
Yeah.
that is important to me as a consumer. So if the ATM people would have gone out and done a survey and said, when you go to the bank, is this inconvenient for you?
Right.
Would it be more convenient if you could just put some kind of card into some kind of a machine and get your money out? or put
Well,
in your information and get your
and
money
real
out.
quick, I just want to throw the dates out there because I just Googled the dates. So 1966 is when the first debit card came out. 1967 is when the first ATM came out.
Okay.
So they came out almost
60,
synonymously
yeah,
with each other.
67, which was when we landed on the moon.
That was the same year we landed on the moon. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Cool. Innovative. We're moving forward.
Yep.
You don't understand what landing on the moon meant. Okay. Unless you were there, unless you were alive then, you really did not understand. But it was proof that we were moving technologically ahead at a staggering pace, and all would be good.
We are going to be flying around in space like Star Trek in the next 20 years.
Yeah, so we were going to be have flying cars, which they're still projecting flying cars, but they just never quite get here because it takes too much energy.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
so the ATM machines came out.
so the ATM machines came out, but they failed. And they failed because people appreciated and enjoyed the human interaction.
Right.
In other words, I want my money, but I want the human interaction of getting my money. So
Yeah.
I want to talk to a teller. Even having tubes that you put your stuff into that went over to the thing, those were like, if you looked at the lineup for the tube was always shorter than the lineup to actually interact with the teller who pushed the thing for you to put your stuff in, put back in, because people wanted the human interaction.
Sure.
And had they stopped and looked at what was the thing that you get from going to the bank, and they realized that that human interaction was important,
Right.
they would have realized the ATM was not the right device at this time.
Right, but how could they have determined that it was going to be the right device?
Well,
because I mean, nowadays you think about it, and like, I don't know if anyone ever doesn't want an ATM. Like that's
but what they
very
were
common
looking for was
practice.
convenience. And people's perception of convenience was interacting with the person quickly to get their money,
Right.
not getting their money.
Gotcha.
I forget what the example was. Oh, Taco Bell we were talking about.
Okay.
If people are friendly at Taco Bell or not friendly at Taco Bell, it's important a little bit. I mean, going to a friendly place is it helps and all. But for the most part, as far as whether I go to Taco Bell or not, I don't care. What I care about is that it's cheap food.
Yep.
And I get it quick, right?
Yeah. As a general statement, I mean that, and I mean hopefully the food is edible and looks good and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah. But that's it. That's why people go there. And if people aren't particularly friendly, I don't care. If I could punch my order into something and and just drive around, I'd be good too.
A lot of people, yeah.
So, I'm not interested in that human interaction.
I mean, it's like the self-checkouts.
Yes.
I mean, they're taking over the place.
Right.
I mean,
because I'm not in this day and age, the human interaction is not that important.
Yeah.
But I remember back in the day, back in the 60s, late 60s, that human interaction was everything. That was the most important thing. I don't want to stand in a line. I want to get through. So they had lots of tellers.
Right.
But I wanted that human interaction. That human interaction told me that it was being done correctly.
So I'm curious, from someone who's lived in kind of both worlds, what do you see as what's changed in society? Or what do you see that changed that in society from your perspective?
Right. So what changed is the perception of
like, do you think it's the perception of just time itself, of like people back in the day felt like they had more time?
No. It's the perception of what you really wanted out of that. I'm trying to think how to say this. I had the word and it slipped out of my mind. What you want was convenience. So today, convenience is all that matters.
Right.
In other words, all I want the end result.
Yeah.
So if I go to the bank to get money, I just want the money.
Yeah.
I don't care about the human interaction. I don't care about all the rest of it. I just want my money.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, computers now have been around long enough, and people have interacted with them enough that back in 1967, nobody had a computer.
Right.
Okay. Nobody had a PC.
Yeah.
So, you got some computer doing something, you don't know whether it's being done right. Where now we assume that if the computer did it, then it's right.
This is true.
Back then, if the human did it, we knew it was right.
Gotcha.
Okay. Even though there was a computer that they were feeding on the backside and all this stuff, it was the human that we knew made it right.
That we trusted. Yeah.
Now we trust the computer.
Yeah. That's true.
So now, so what you're doing is you're shifting it from the teller should get it right. I hope they get it right. It's
Right.
supposed to get it right, but I know the computer will get it right. And so now an
That's
ATM makes a
interesting.
lot of sense because I just want the end result. I just want my money.
Yeah.
I don't care about the human interaction. I just care about getting
But
the
what do
end
you
result.
but do you think computers have just made that transition of like the human interaction mean less and less to people? Or do you think people today are and obviously I wasn't alive back then, right? But I look at movies and TV shows from that time period and I feel like from my perception, people seem to have been less busy of time, right? In the sense of like it seems like there was a much more relaxed state about how they went about things. Whereas today, I feel like the modern day American family, right, that has kids, they're like, oh, I've got, this after school program, and I've got this, and this and this. And like their days are just like slammed full of stuff, and they're all constantly going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And there's not like that slow period. And I feel like when I watch TV shows from that time period, movies from that time period, it almost seems like, yeah, the dad may be working all the time, but the mom's like, doing this or that, or, or they have dinner together. And it's just like a lazy, like, time together. There's no like like, oh, we got to finish dinner to go do this. It just seems very like more relaxed, I guess would be the best way to put it. So like was that really how it was, or is that just the way that shows and movies
No,
portrayed
that's
it?
how it was. But
So what changed to make society so like tight on time, I guess is my thing.
right.
What changed from us being a society that was very like, you went to work, you did your work, you came home, and you just enjoyed your time, to today it's like, I mean, it's rare to find people that are just enjoying their time. Usually there's something they're doing. There's something else that they're trying to get done. Something else they're trying.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that constant like barragement of stuff
Okay.
versus this just like very
Right.
lazy, laid back kind
Yeah.
of lifestyle.
So go Google when Xerox created the first copier.
Okay.
And then Google when the first fax machine.
Why does Xerox keep showing
was
up
out.
there?
Because they were one of the innovators. They were an innovator in their day. And they did a good job of staying on top of that innovation for a long, long, long time. And then they got undercut by the Japanese, where they were buying a lot of their parts from.
You said first copy machine and first what?
Fax machine.
So 1959 and 1964.
Okay, so 1959 for the first copy machine.
Yep.
Yeah, but they weren't in use until the 70s, early 70s, that the price came down.
Okay.
Okay. So being able to make a copy of a document. So in the old days, you had secretaries, okay, what we call admins today. But you had to have that because every time you had a document, especially if you had to have an original copy, you had to have somebody sit down with a typewriter and type the same document.
Yeah, how was it that we were less efficient back in that time period,
Okay,
but we had more time?
It's okay.
Explain that to me.
Sure, I'll explain it. Is you had more people working. So where today an executive types his own emails and sends his own letters, in those days you had somebody who was in charge of sending out his letters because he would dictate them, and people took what was known as shorthand.
Yep.
And then they would type up the shorthand, the person would double check it and then say yes, and you sent it out by letter. So think about working on a contract by mail and working through revisions and it taking a week to get a letter from here to there.
Wow.
Or 2-3
Yeah.
days.
I mean, that's a long sales process.
Yeah. I mean, you're
It's a
looking
very long
at a month as a normal deal, and
Yeah.
super fast. You better have somebody who can put sneakers on and run to the other side of the place. And you're running things
Yeah.
back and forth to get all the changes back and forth between the two parties.
Well, I mean, that makes sense why I mean, I don't know if New York still does, but I know at one time they had like their own little like mini postal systems
Right.
shorts for
Right.
like business people to like back and forth stuff
Right.
same day and whatnot.
Right, and that's why. Okay, so then the next step was the fax machine.
Okay.
I'm going to do a contract. I'm going to send you a fax.
Right.
And now you can get it right away. But who's going to have fax machines? Your larger companies. And then over time, by the mid 70s, they'd come down to where they were cheap enough that everybody could have a fax machine.
Okay.
So that sped up the interaction between the two
Yep.
and getting contracts signed and everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we had the PCs come
Right.
out in the 80s.
Okay.
All right. And they were toys, they were demeaned, but they did great at letting a person type up a letter once, make a change to it, and type it up again perfectly. And if you needed 4 copies, I can get you 4 copies in half an hour,
Yep.
not 2-3 hours later or the
Right.
next day. Okay. That, and then you added the internet
Yeah.
in the 80s, late 80s, right? 90s.
Yep.
Now I can take that letter that I wrote that I can now write myself because I know how to interact with this thing called a computer, and I can now send it to this other person on the, somewhere else in town, 2-3 towns away, on the other side of the world, and it'll get it to them in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And so things are that much faster, and that human interaction that you had with the person to write the letter, to correct the letter, with the post office where you took it
Yep.
to, all those human interactions weren't necessary anymore.
Yeah.
And so now things are going faster, and the computer we trust
Yeah.
to get it from here to there, or tell us that it didn't get there, right?
No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
This email failed. Oh,
I think here's what's interesting to me hearing you talk about this is I don't know if anyone's talking about that transition in the work environment. That's a really interesting perspective
well,
of yours of like,
it used to be that every executive had a secretary.
yeah, no, no, yeah,
And some
but
of
you
them
had
had
to.
2
But
secretaries,
you're
right?
correct. You had to
In order to do all the paperwork.
if your hand typing everything up, you have to have that interact. You have to have the secretary, but B, you have to have that interaction. You can't not like the human interaction is a requirement for you to have success. But nowadays, you can be an executive and never interact with anyone in person the entire day if you wanted to. I mean, and
For a
still do
lot
your
of
job
jobs. For a lot of jobs, yes.
because it's all done through the internet.
Yes.
Like that's such a huge transition in like society that like I didn't
Yes.
even like.
Yeah.
I've never put the 2 and 2
Yeah.
together, but
Yeah.
like that's a
And
huge transition in society.
it's a dehumanizing of the process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it dehumanizes everything because there's no human element. It's just you. It's just you and a computer.
Yeah.
Like it. That's
And even the
crazy
other
to think
person,
about.
and the other person talking to you is through the computer.
Yeah. No, I mean,
And then you
that's so
add in
interesting.
texting, and you add in,
Yeah.
social media and yada yada. And now you move to this place where the computer is what I interact with.
Not the actual human beings.
Yeah. And yes, there's people sometimes on the other side of those conversations, but they're at arm's length.
Yeah, yeah. But that's so interesting to hear you talk about it from a work environment perspective first, everything else second, because everyone I think talks about it from like a general society perspective usually.
Right.
And I've kind of understood it, but I've never fully understood it. But when you explain it that way from this work environment first, then the general society, I'm going, oh, I see that correlation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see that trend and how it just expanded and expanded from business to personal and et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And we eliminated all those secretarial positions or
Yeah.
admin positions all the way through there.
We became so efficient that you don't need people.
Right.
But we became so efficient that you don't need people, which means you don't even want to interact with people almost because it's not needed.
Right.
Like there's no
Well,
point of it.
If you have Calendly, you can fill your calendar, right?
Yeah.
You say, here, go to my Calendly
Yeah.
link, schedule a time, and I'll be there.
Yeah.
And Calendly will let me know, and I'll look at my calendar and see what.
Yep.
It's scheduled. Everything's fine.
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. I mean, I think it's really insightful for me at least. Like that gives me a whole new perception on like observing these trends and understanding these changes in trends. But that's just
So it's
crazy to think
improved our
about.
productivity. Personal productivity is way up
Yeah. No, I mean compared to
what we had to deal with. And then when you look at forms, people are filling out forms by hand or putting them in a typewriter and rolling down a certain spot and typing and trying to make sure they got all the spots. Where now with the computerized form, you can just fill in whatever, and if you miss something, the
it'll
form
let
can
you
tell
know.
you,
Yeah.
and then you can go back and fix that thing.
Yeah.
It's not like you printed it all up and you sent it to somebody and they said, "Oh, and by the way, you missed this box,
Right.
so you can't give you the loan today. You're going to have to
Yeah.
resubmit this with this box filled in properly."
Yeah. No, I mean, that's yeah, totally different perspectives. I mean,
Yeah, and everybody looks at it
it's
from the
crazy.
outside in, but it's really the inside out.
Yeah.
It's business trying to be more efficient, trying to have its people do things that are
Yeah.
valuable. Because one of the things all the secretaries in the day,
Right.
people forgive me for using that word, real word, real people, and a real valuable job. But they hated is that they had to go back and retype something,
Yeah.
and they had to retype it perfectly.
Right.
And that was one of the big things with the IBM Selectric that they came out with. Is one of the IBM Selectrics would actually allow you to store the document you typed or the last 4
Okay.
documents you typed. And when you made corrections, it would keep track of those, and so it would put it in without the corrected document exactly the way it was typed. So once you typed it up and they said yes, that's fine, then I can print another copy of
Gotcha.
that or 2, 3 copies of that.
That's interesting.
And that was a huge step
Yeah.
forward.
No, yeah, that's just crazy to think about that transition. So, I mean, I'll go back to my point again though of how do you determine that your innovation
So the first
is
thing
on time
is real
or not?
convenient. Real convenient.
Okay.
Like a lot of things you think are convenient and would be convenient, and yes, they would
Well, the
be
ATM was
if
convenient.
yeah,
So if it's convenient,
but
give it time. It might not be the right time for that convenience, is what I'm
correct,
hearing from you,
correct.
right? Is if it's convenient, it will most likely come about eventually.
Yeah,
Like there will come a
right.
time period where people need it and want it.
So
But give
what
it
your
time.
market research would show is that we're waiting for a time when people are more interested in getting their money than having the human interaction at the bank.
Right. Right.
Okay. And as people move more and more towards, I just want the end result
Yeah.
versus that process, then that's gonna that's
That's
when
so
that
interesting.
becomes comes.
I love that. Sorry,
This one.
I just want to throw this out there because I think what's really really interesting and cool about what you're saying. I don't even know if you realize is we've talked about for a while how Amazon has made this end result the goal. Like this like that's the horrible thing that
Mhm.
Amazon's done, right?
Right.
Is they've made like the end result's the only thing that matters, and there's no wait and down. But like your whole story is like that's been our progress for the last 50 years.
Exactly. Well, even Amazon doesn't make sense. Has never made sense
Yeah,
until recently because I go to the store to see what all is there,
yeah.
right?
No. No, you're.
I go not just to buy. Go in because I want to buy one thing, but I want to see what other
But what I'm saying is
new
that mindset
stuff
of
they
I
have.
want the end result. I don't want to deal with anything else but the end result. What you're sharing has been going on for 50, 60 years now in American society. That is
Yeah,
not a new thing.
yes, it goes back to the 70s actually. So start from 70s to now.
Yeah.
So yeah, over 50 years.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
why I said 50, 60 years.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
been a thing. But no one's talked about it from the 70s and 80s how people were doing that. They just have talked about Amazon and how Amazon's doing it. And like I just think it's a really interesting perspective because our society, I think you're correct, has and from your story, has been for a very long time pushing ourselves to be able to get the end result faster and not deal with anything before the end result.
Correct.
And that has been a focus and goal of our American society for many, many years now.
Yes.
And it
And the
is not
world
new.
and the whole world is like that
Yeah.
too.
But it's
Just the
not
rest of the
something
world
new.
is worse than us.
But I'm just saying it's not something new. It's not new to Amazon. It's not new to the 21st century. It's not new to the 2020s, 2010s.
No.
Like that has been going on for a very long time of us as a society pushing to be able to get an end result instantaneously
Mhm.
without the others.
Yeah. Well, why were they trying to get ships that could sail to India? Going back to your
Yeah.
book that you read about trade and early trade and the
Well,
fact
as
that
far as why they were trying to come like through the Americas or why in
why were they
general?
trying to sail to around to China
Right.
from England? Because it would be faster than the land route
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have the terrorists of the land route.
Well,
And
the thieves and stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
All the other dangers of the land
so
route.
you could eliminate the dangers and you could reduce the time,
Yeah.
overall time that it would take to
Yeah.
get there because you could put a whole lot
Fractions.
more stuff in a ship.
Fractions of the time per how much you could carry.
Yeah.
I mean,
And so that convenience thing has always been going on. It's been going on. Is my point is it's been going on forever.
It's just
It's
a
been
human
accelerated.
society.
It's been accelerated by the computer and the PC. And the PC and the computer would have never existed had we not gone to the moon.
Right. Well, I think of like, I guess what I'm thinking of more of is like, salespeople back or sales conversations back in the day. Like,
Okay.
I feel like there was a time period in the 60s and 70s where people enjoyed the conversation piece before a sale or during the sales process. Like, that
Yes.
was culturally like important to people,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
having that interaction, having those conversations was important. Nowadays, I feel like people are far more interested and excited to just get the car than to have any human interaction.
Correct.
And that's more of the thing that I think is interesting. But from what you've been sharing, has been going on for a while. But it's an interesting transition in human society to go from this like we want to connect with other people to get to the end result, but like we want to get to the end result, but we want to still interact with other people. We want to like have conversations, ask people about our kids and stuff, right?
Right.
To today's society is more and more about I just want to get it. I don't need the human interaction and I don't want the human interaction.
Right.
I just want.
Well, I've figured out what I want. That's
Yeah.
the other thing. Is because there's so much information out there, what people don't appreciate
That's true
is there's
too.
so much information out there now that you can go through the whole process and you get to the place where I know this is what I want,
Yeah.
and I want it exactly in this form at this whatever, and I'm done. I'm good.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. One of the things that I think is well, and to that point, here's one of the things I'll say that I think is funny. I used to believe, right, it was better not to have your price on your website than to have it on your website. But I found in my own interactions lately, like I want to tell you what I want and just give me the fucking price. Just tell me what it is. Don't make me go through a sales call. Don't make me go through the human. I just want to know what the answer is, so I can budget and know whether this is within my budget or not within my budget, and that's it.
Yep.
That's all I care
Can I
about.
begin to afford this or can I not?
That's all I care about.
And
And
you
if you
wanna,
can't answer that to me, I just don't even want to try.
yeah,
I just move on. And if I find someone who will give me the answer, then I'll go, yes, I can afford that, or no, I can't. Like,
or I've got to get at least to this level. A
yeah,
lot of times, this is what it starts at. You know what I mean? And we know it's going to be more.
yeah,
But if I can't even find a way to get to that
yeah,
level,
absolutely.
then I know that hey, this is just not going to.
But I say that just because like there's so many companies out there that are like trying to push like, oh, contact our sales rep. But like our society as a whole is kind of really, and like I see it with
Moving
myself,
away from that.
a lot
Yes.
of us are moving away from that. It's just that's inconvenient for us,
Yes. You're
and it's
asking
not
me to
something we
go
want to
through a
deal
whole
with it.
other step. A whole person that I've got to now interact with
Yeah,
for a period of time. I just want the answer.
yeah. I just want to know, is it within a budget that makes sense for me?
Right. And if you look at Carvana, let's pick on
Yeah,
Carvana.
sure. Because they've been focusing hard on this in the car industry.
They're having troubles, but let's
They're
pick on
attempting.
them. Let's pick on them just because it's fun.
Sure.
Carvana's big thing is give us the VIN of your vehicle.
Yep.
And we'll tell you what it's worth, and then we'll come pick it up.
Yeah. That's been their big claim lately. Yep.
So it's real easy. Redfin was buying houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us your address, and we'll tell you what we'll pay for it, and we're done. I think you need to have a little more interaction than that. I think a little more than just pictures that the person takes of their car and all, But but it's a great example of how we want to just kind of depersonalize it. We just want the end result. I just want to sell my car. I don't want to sit around forever. I don't want to go to 5 different places to try to figure out what I can get for it. Just tell me what it's worth, and if I think that that's a good number, then I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Just go on, rather than spending the time to go to multiple places to see who will give me the most money for it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Sorry, I just want to throw that side change it just because it's just very the psychology behind that's very interesting to me.
But that's what's going on, and that's because of how the workplace has changed.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, who goes into stores and shops?
What do you mean by shops? As in who looks around, as in who wants help? Like those are two different.
Yeah. Well, if you look at, let's pick on Walmart.
Sure.
Okay. Walmart is still sitting in the center of their demographic. Because
Convenience,
most of their
and
stuff,
price.
most of their people are working class people.
Yeah.
Who typically work under a manager, who work with others in some kind of blue collar job.
Yeah.
Right? and they have human interactions all day long.
Yeah.
But their boss doesn't have human interaction. Their boss has human interactions with them,
Yeah.
and their boss's boss
Yep.
has human interactions with them, but it's more and more limited as the further you go up the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
And who's their ideal customer? The blue collar worker. So they want to come into Walmart. They don't necessarily want to shop with Walmart online. They don't necessarily want to shop at Amazon online because they want that human interaction.
Well, do you think it's that, or do you think it's just the convenience of pickup today? I feel like for that one,
Well,
it's mainly convenience of pickup today.
Some of it's the convenience of pickup today.
Oh,
It's that I just want the end result, and this is the way I can go there. I can get this. I know I can find what I need, and I get it today.
because I mean, I feel like for me at least, like it's just like cheapest and convenience.
Yeah.
Like that's what I care about, right? Is it
Yeah.
close to me, and is it cheap?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what matters.
Right. And so, and that goes back into that whole thing that nobody wants to talk about is who is your real customer.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what income level do they have? What kind of a job do they have to make that kind of money? And what are their human interactions?
Well, and I'll say this on that note too, and this is something that's going to hit people, I think, soon. What's the stability of their job right now look like?
Right.
Because I can tell you right now, I've run into a lot of people in the tech space that got laid off in the last like year, and a good amount of them are like, "Hey, for the next 6 months, I'm golden." Like I forget the exact term, but the package.
Severance
Thank you.
package. Yeah.
The severance package they got from Amazon or Google or Facebook or whoever, like they're like, "Hey, I'm set. I got like 6-9 months. Like I'm making all the money I made, and I don't even have to work. Like I'm golden." But after that 9 months, they're kind of like, and I've run into a few of them where they're like getting to the end of that severance package time, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm like at the point now where it's like I kind of need to start looking for something." Because it's like, yeah, I've been like spending my money and like, yeah, I have savings, but it's like, I'm now at the point where it's like, I'm not going to keep having money coming in, which means I want to start spending my savings. And so they're like, I actually kind of need to try to find something because I can't just go through my $30,000 of savings because that was supposed to buy me my house one day. And
Yeah.
now like, I want to start eating away at that because I don't have a job.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's being aware of like the stability and the comfortability that people have with their jobs is huge.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's all those things that
Yeah.
we see new businesses just kind of ignore because I'm not sure what that is, so I'll just forget about that. We'll do something that I know. And the reality is you can't forget those things. You can't just throw those things out like say, well, I don't know how to put that in my business plan, but we'll just leave that out. It's not that you need that, and if you can't do it, then you need to find somebody who can.
Well, I want to throw something at you, and I want your thoughts on this real quick, and then we'll kind of leave it up on this one for market research and market demand, okay? For market demand, there's a term that has been popularized by pop marketing, as I'm starting to call it, right?
I'm glad you found a way to classify it. Okay.
Well, I don't know how else to define like the modern digital marketing realms other than pop marketing.
Okay.
Because that's just like pop music, right?
Yep.
It seems good. It seems great. Everyone listens to it, but there's more to it than just that. But pop marketing has this famous word that I'm going to use.
Okay.
I want you to tell me what it means to you. Target market.
Yeah.
You can't listen to any pop marketer today and not hear that term, target market, thrown out.
Yeah.
What's it mean to you?
Well, today, because of all the research that we've done and in kind of reinventing our company and really looking at things.
Yeah.
So target market for me originally meant people on Google are looking for what you do. That was easy. Okay. Now target market means what is the real psychographic? What is the real desires and hopes and ambitions of these people that I think want this thing?
Okay. I want to throw out a different term. I want to know your thoughts on it.
Okay.
I think target market, and this is a personal one, I think target market we need to get rid of as a society. I think as a marketing industry, we need to throw that term and just literally eliminated almost entirely from our vernacular.
It's all over our website.
Yeah, I know.
Before you,
I know. It needs to get eliminated. Okay. I'm starting to come to the conclusion that target market is the most dumbest wording whenever created. And same thing with target avatar. Okay. And it's not that it's literally dumb, but I think the way that people view it, it makes it dumb. I think it should all be replaced with market segment. I think a market segment is a much better defined, right? Because a market segment is defined as parameters you set upon people who are interested in what you have to offer.
who would be customers?
Right. And technically your target avatar is a part of your market segment, but your market segment is this generalized term of this is the group of people we appeal to.
Right, but your target avatar is just another word for target market.
Yes. Yeah. No, I know. But I'm saying those two words.
And the problem with segment, okay, and you're right, target segment is the right word.
Well, my thing. Well, real quick, I just want to say this, right? My problem with target avatar or target market is I feel like people use that and they go, well, it's like me. And they describe themselves a lot of times, which is cool. But is there a group that's called you? Is there a group that you create that you're like the leader of, or you're like a member of, where everyone's like you, that is hundreds of people, thousands of people, deep? I highly doubt it.
You can hope so. I mean, there's people that are successful and they're really good at that.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're very good at what the broad society is, where there's thousands of people.
But that's not always the case.
But there's a lot of other people with good ideas, good inventions, things that will change society for the better.
Yeah.
That are just not like them.
And to me, that's why I think market segment's a better term, because market segment's the idea of defining a group of people that already exists and putting those parameters to define this is the group of people we serve. And I think that is far more valuable of a resource or a way of doing things than how, in my opinion, people seem to do it today.
I would agree with you.
Like when I hear define your target customer, well, to me, that's not as valuable as defining my market segment.
Right. Well,
the market segment is me saying these are the parameters that are necessary for me to have a successful customer. Defining a target avatar, I feel like it's just much harder of a thing for people to really comprehend and do.
Right, because it takes
effectively.
Because it takes in multiple segments. The advantage of a segment is you have to understand that most businesses have 2 or 3 and oftentimes 5 or 6 different market segments that they appeal to.
Yeah.
But each of those segments has either a different motivation or they have a different place that they start with.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head of
well, I mean, I can give you an easy one that recently has started having to expand their market segment, or hasn't had to, but has chosen to start trying to expand their market segment. So there's a company called FC150, shoe cleaner company.
Okay.
So clean shoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
To make them all shiny and stuff. What market segments do you think they've included into that market segment now?
Well, I know originally that was business executives, and it was business executives.
Well, this is sneaker shoes. This is sneaker shoes.
Oh, sneakers.
Yeah. Like, sneakerhead sneakers.
Really?
It's a really great company. FC150, by the way, great shout out to them. Like, I kind of need to do a video on them alone because the guy's done an incredible job, and like social media wise and everything, like killed it. But sneaker cleaner, okay. What markets outside of sneaker cleaning do you think they've expanded into now? There's 2 markets they've expanded into. I'm really happy that they're expanding into them.
I'm at a loss.
Hats. So like baseball caps, when they get dirty, being able to clean them up, especially like white ones.
Right, because you can't wash them in your washing machine without ruining them. Yes.
Yep. And especially the white ones, right? And then purses.
I can understand that too, yes.
Because purses, again, get dirty. You buy it secondhand at Goodwill or whatever, and being able to clean it up and make it look brand new.
Right. Well, the biggest problem
really
with the purse is that it gets put down in a lot of crazy places, and there's always stuff there. And even normal oil from your skin will actually, over time, start to discolor it.
So they've branched out into those 2 markets, though, on top of their sneaker shoe market segment. But those are 2 entirely different market segments, right? Yes, they all correlate around cleaning,
Well, they're
and
trying
having
cleaning,
clean stuff.
right, but cleaning something that's difficult to clean
Yes. And so like
is what
yes,
we're trying
that's
to
a
talk
core
about.
so that's like the core psychographic market segment, right? So that'd be like your TAM, right?
Hmm.
But then you have your SAM and stuff, which is like the individual market segments.
Right.
And to me, that's a far more effective way to look at your marketing than this way of like, who's your target avatar?
Right.
Don't describe me your target avatar. Break down your TAM, SAM, and what is it? SOM. Thank you. Break down your TAM, SAM, and SOM, and what market segments actually fit into that, and how those parameters really work out to separate those market segments, and what connects those market segments. To me, that's a far better way to look at your marketing than target avatar or target.
It is, but it's also requires a lot more work.
Oh, absolutely, it's more work. But I feel like, at least for me, I'm far more effective when I break companies down that way than when I break them down through this, like, who's your target avatar? Like, are they married? Are they single? Like, yes, that matters, but like, what matters first is the core psychograph,
Well, that
right?
core psychographic that's going to motivate them to buy.
Yes, the core psychographic that causes the purchase is most important. And then breaking down all the parameters underneath that build the like success for your company to know if there's enough people even like that.
Right.
Because if there's not enough people that meet your market segment requirements, right? There just aren't, like, if you're going to have businesses that are over $2 million, we'll say over $10 million, right? Like, that's the minimum threshold, is you need $10 million in sales just to be like able to afford you. And there's only 10 businesses with $10 million in sales in your neighborhood, and you want to just work in your neighborhood. You got 10 options to try and convince. That's your market. That's your market size.
Right. And that's what you're stuck with.
If those 10 businesses don't see the value in it,
then you're out.
then you're out.
You're done. Yeah.
So you need to understand like where the market demand really is, and that market demand may be the 1,000 businesses in the city over. It may be the 10,000 businesses in the city beneath you. That's a day's drive
or
away.
Across the state.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, like it could be LA is the place you have to go to for that. Because LA's just got a higher density population. Well, then that's the case. Like, don't try to force a business when the demand's not there, because it just tends to lead to failure. Right.
Right.
And understand where that demand is and why.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's it for this one. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add real quick.
No, I think we covered it really well. I think we uncovered, in fact, some things we didn't think we were going to even talk about, because this isn't scripted. Yeah. We have a general conversation to make. We're sure we're kind of both mentally in the same place, but we don't script these. So what you're seeing is actually us brainstorming in front of you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And no, I love it. All right. I think we're going to call that it for this one.